Welcome everyone to the Inner Circle. I'm Hector Alvarado, and today we're going to talk about something that every business owner thinks they're on top of, but almost nobody actually is, and that's cost visibility and control. So most companies, they always talk about going under, they talk about the struggle, but here's the thing: is that most organizations don't die from one big blow. They actually bleed out slowly, right? It's a few $100 here, $500, a $100 here, it's $1,000 there. It could be, some little bit of overtime that isn't really accounted for or planned for, extra shipping costs, unused software subscriptions that could be out there, right? All of these little things create activity that you don't see every single day or every single week or every single month until the profit that you thought was there is gone. And you're like, what happened? Like, how is it not there? Well, it's not there because of just simple activity that you didn't catch in the forefront. And you didn't stop the bleeding. So it's silent bleeding. Today, we're going to break this down to give you an idea of some of these hidden costs, and we call them leaks because they're really leaks within your businesses that organizations miss and leaders miss. You're tasked with running a department, or you're running your business, and you're just not looking at those details. And so we're going to give you tools and some framework, used by the best companies in the world. Not, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to give you some examples of some large organizations that have done it. I can tell you from my experience, I've applied it. Every organization that I go to, it's applied to, and it is ingrained in their DNA by the time that we're done with the organization. So, I'm going to give you some names around Toyota, Walmart, Dell. All of these have used some of these principles, and then of course the ones that I've worked with. And then I'm going to give you a simple action plan you'll be able to take away from today and get you looking at some of those cost drivers. So let's jump right into it. Some of these that I call the profit killers that you don't see, right? And so here's the truth. Most of you owners and most of you business leaders out there look at two lines. You stare at your revenue and you look at your payroll when you first get your P&L sheet or your activity sheets, but you ignore everything that's in between. And the reason you do that, it's because you're not familiar with it, you believe somebody else is managing it, and or you've left it for your accountant to tell you the details. But that is where all that leaking is hiding. That's where all of that activity is happening that you just don't see. So I'm going to give you some examples. And here's one where Tesla, we all know Tesla, super big organization, but back in 2017, Elon Musk actually admitted that they were spending millions of dollars fixing cars after they were built. And it wasn't because the process was rushed. It was not that. The production was on point. It was because they were losing money afterwards, fixing problems that the production team had created. So time-wise, they were good. They completed on time. They thought they were great. They were efficient. But then they were cutting corners and they were missing things. And those reworks added tons of labor, part costs, and wasteful activity that ended up costing their organization millions of dollars. And so in the trucking industry, we see this a lot. We see labor inefficiencies. I've seen trucking companies that lose thousands of dollars a month because of unplanned overtime, unplanned deadhead miles, all of this because, nobody's like stealing. They're just not being tracked. They're not being monitored. And so because it's not, it's activity that's costing you lots of money. Here's one that today most people in organizations don't think to check: subscriptions and tools that nobody uses. Every time you sign up for an app, you're paying an individual subscription. A few bucks here, you sign up for Slack, it's like $4.99 for a person. You sign up for this other program, it's a few dollars for your licenses, so on. These all add up. But then what happens when people leave? right? Who is monitoring that cost? And so I'll give you a real life example. Amazon literally ran quarterly audits to delete unused software licenses, allowing them to save thousands of dollars. Like they said that they were saving around $200 a month. And you might think, well, what's $200 a month? Well, 200 bucks times 12 people is 28 grand a year. And so it all adds up, right? Pennies, within the pennies is some of the profit. And it's just about habit in looking for that. And so we think back of so many organizations, and there's a correlation between your thought process and you're actually doing it. You might be listening to this call right now and thinking, yeah, we're probably okay. Like we're probably good. Well, I can tell you that if that's your mindset right now, my friend, you're already losing money. You need to go look and uncover some of this activity that you may be missing out. And so what are we talking about? What are some of the tools and what are some of the disciplines that we can look at to really make this click for us? And so I'm going to give you an organization that essentially reinvented this and wrote the script. We may have heard out this called Toyota style, or the way that Toyota did it, but it's really lean cost mapping. And what they did is they involved and they created this idea of looking at time, looking at motion, looking at inventory, and looking at defective costs and reducing waste. They didn't look at dollars, they just looked at activity. And they looked to remove wasted seconds and wasted steps from their entire network. And what's crazy when you think about that, it's the fact that like within those little activities, the pennies add up to dollars, then add up to thousands of dollars. And the name of this is quite comical, but it's so good. It's Muda, Japanese Muda. And I thought, hey, well, check the Muda because that's where your moolah's at. So, it's one of those things, right? It's kind of cheesy, but it's so applicable and it's so true. Like that, it's simple. And so when I think back of a lot of these organizations and what are some of the tools that they could start applying, the first one that comes to mind is a rolling 13-week cost review. This is the best practice that I would ask all of you to implement now. It's not just reviewing it, once a week or just seeing the snapshot of that time. Look for the averages in length of time. So private equity firms do this religiously. Everything gets cost reviewed. And by reviewing 13 weeks, you're looking at every quarter and you're really diving deep. You're diving deep into the activity, and so all of this gets trimmed, gets reassigned, gets focused on. And we go further and we talk about dashboards and we talk about, how these could be implemented in organizations. And within these dashboards, you want to track cost per unit. You want to track cost per labor hour, cost per shipment. You want to track your cost per product line. All of this because if you can't crush competitors on pricing like we talked last week, well, then start to make it on your margins by being most efficient and removing wasteful activities that ultimately allow you to be more profitable at the end, right? And the one sort of last sort of step around this concept is cost ownership. This is the critical piece. Jeff Bezos made teams operate like internal businesses. If they bought a tool, they owned it. If they wasted money on it, it came out of their budget, right? And so having that concept and that thought throughput in the entire organization created one thing, that when someone owns the cost performance, then they manage it. When everyone owns it, no one manages it, no one owns it, no one will do anything. So creating that specific ownership allows everybody to start to really have somebody that's engaged in that. Okay, so now we're going to break this down a little bit more and talk about the Muda concept, because there are 7 steps to Muda so that you can watch it. Okay. The first one is overproduction. So monitoring overproducing your goods can be wasteful activity and will cost you thousands down the road. The second one is wait time or waiting, dead time essentially. Okay. The third one is transportation or transport inefficiencies within your business or suppliers. Fourth one is over processing. So when you're looking at over manufacturing potentially or over processing internally, you have processes and steps that are like they're making your entire team inefficient. I'm sure someone's been in something that you're like, okay, but I touch it here so that they can complete it over there, so that that person can press another button, and it's like redundancy in the system. That's over processing. Like why, right? And so think about those activities within your businesses today. Inventory is another one. I always hear this from wholesalers or suppliers. They're like, well, I need the inventory. I got to have it. Sure. But what if you start carrying inventory of SKUs that don't move? Then all you've done is you're tied up your dollars in stuff that's just sitting taking up space, which then requires you to have more space to house it when it doesn't move. So inventory is a double killer because it kills you directly with your cash flow because you're tying up money to this product, but then it also kills you on your square footage required to run and operate your business. So it's these type of things that you have to be looking out for. The sixth one is motion. And what I mean by motion, or what the Japanese talk about motion, is time wasted to get things done. Meaning, in a warehouse scenario, and I know, James, you're an overhead door installer. I don't know, maybe you sell overhead doors. I don't know. But let's put it into a concept that might be understood for everybody here. In a warehouse, you receive some goods and you place them into a storage location. Well, let's assume that that SKU is one of your fastest selling SKUs, but it's placed at the furthest point of your warehouse. Every time you ship out that SKU, your forklift or your people have to travel long distance to get to it to put it back to the trailer. Well, you might think, Hector, but that's seconds. Sure, but seconds through days, through weeks, through months add up to wasted days potentially in activity. And this is something that we did, that I remember doing every single month at Pepsi and at Frito-Lay. We would look for SKU movement and we would adjust warehouse space and putting it to the closest doors for our order pickers to reduce their motion in the warehouse so that we had less travel on our forklift and less travel by our people to get to that SKU to ship it out. And that is a concept that that those of you that have warehouses or shipping and distribution should be looking at. And the last one, the seventh step, is defects. And this is when you have errors in your service and in your products. So you think of, again, I'm gonna use James as an example. Let's say he has an installation that he sent his crew to yesterday, but they forgot to put a couple screws on while they finished the door. And last night the client called and said, "Hey, I need your guy to come back and fix this again." Well, now that crew is already delayed for whatever scheduled activity was on the books for today. Now they're going to go back to that house. They're going to go take the time to do that. So you wasted drive time, fuel, labor, all of that because the individuals didn't do the proper installation at that point. So defects, and we heard it from Tesla as they talked about their production line defects that was costing them millions. So this is the part that nobody talks about, right? They usually look at those P&L line items and then they forget about them. They don't dive in here. But what Toyota did is they trained their entire team, and Pepsi did the same thing. And this was not just for managers. I want to make sure that you hear this point because you might walk away from this call and think, "Oh, I'm going to go tell my managers to do this." No, this was not just for managers. the entire organization was tasked by removing waste. They had to see the cost as waste, not dollars. When they thought of it as dollars, it didn't click. But when they thought of it as wasted activity, activity that would make them more efficient, that would make them more effective, and that would reward them, that is the key component around getting buy-in and getting the mentality and culture around looking for a good Muda culture within your organizations. And so, all these things was something that modern companies are looking to apply in one way or the other. And I can give you an example. We've all been to IKEA. We've all gone there. We've all seen the flat boxes and taken all that stuff home and then spent countless hours building it, right? But but one of the interesting concepts that IKEA did, it was on purpose. They created this flat package model to eliminate shipping and warehouse costs. So, they thought of themselves as having the ability to have cost control as their competitive advantage. And so, I want us to put sort of our entrepreneurial mind right now, and let me hit you with, a couple examples and questions to think about. And some examples like this, so you can kind of put it into context. Sam Walton, the owner of Walmart, was notorious for being super cheap. Frugal, let's call him frugal, right? And one of the things that he did is he had like his executives, his managers, his people share rooms when they traveled in order to save money. And I'm not telling you to go to that extreme. All I'm saying is the concept around identifying wasteful cost within your organization. As entrepreneurs and as leaders, we should be looking at that. And I said earlier, PepsiCo, Indra Nooyi was an incredible CEO of the organization, and she slashed low profit products. Every year, she'd say, if that SKU, if that is not selling us the right profit margin, we're canceling it. It's not going to be sold, it's not going to be produced, it's not going to be packaged, it's going to be removed, and we're going to focus on the ones that do sell. Because they were, really looking at their supply chain resources and looking at not to waste it. So, don't wait until there's a problem in your organization. All of these leaders, they attacked it. They took action before it attacked their margins. And so that's the critical thing when we talk about cost cutting and cost measuring and cost visibility, is that it requires action and diligence. So how do you do this? Well, first, look at your P&L. Grab your P&L, which we talked about it a few months ago. We shared how to review a P&L. Circle your three biggest cost buckets: your labor, your inventory, your fuel, your software. I don't know, you know what your cost buckets are, but look through them and circle your three of your biggest cost items, and then assign an owner to each one of them. Not your finance team. I want to be clear, and I'm not knocking accountants, but their purpose in this is not to find what's wrong. Their purpose is to compile the data. You, as the owner and your leaders, you are tasked with finding what's wrong. So assign one owner to each cost, and then get that team involved. Ask to set a reduction goal. It could be, I don't care, 3, 5, 10%, it doesn't matter. But you start small and start looking to see how you can make some improvements. Remember, when someone owns it, it'll get attention, and when it gets attention, it gets fixed. So as we go to, wrap up, and the call to action this week is for you to literally go back and select your top 3 costs and give an owner, assign an owner to that KPI. And again, don't overthink it, because you're going to be shocked at how fast that individual starts to look for cost savings opportunities. They're going to be engaged that you've brought them into this, and it's almost like a mission that people organically get attracted to, and they go looking for this, and it becomes a prideful activity to go look for cost reductions. And that's the psyche and psychology around some of these processes. And one of the things that I always think is interesting. I always talk to entrepreneurs, I always talk to business owners and leaders, and they're always talking about revenue. They're like, "Yep, my revenue's great. My revenue is big. My revenue's loud." But cost savings are always quiet. And as we are all chasing that next dollar, let's shift our mind and instead let's try keeping the dollars that we've already earned. It's a mind shift. Let's go to that mindset so that we can continue to grow our profits. So Willie, we did a little bit something different today, and I'll go to you just to maybe help put this into context for the group as the leaders that are sitting here listening today.
Yeah, very good, Hector. I really like what Hector just walked us through, and those questions hit right at the heart of where most businesses leak money, labor, process, and waste. It's easy to think we've got it under control, but as Hector said, it's usually the little inefficiencies that stack up and quietly eat away at the margins. So I see that being a huge issue, and I have also experienced that in my own business. And I just remember when we started looking at everything, what is the inefficiencies of movement of our freight as in a freight trucking business? There was so much room to improve. And but there's the thing, Hector touched on it briefly here at the end. Before you can fix any of it, there's got to be a mindset shift. We have to be willing to actually look for the fat that needs to be trimmed, and that's not comfortable work. It means questioning habits that have formed over years, sometimes, and then the routines we've just accepted as normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where real leadership shows up. The courage to say, we can do this better. Maybe we don't need to accept waste as the cost of doing business. And that's another thing I hear all the time. People think it's just the cost of doing business. And honestly, I have to point to Hector. He convinced me otherwise when he came into my business. It's not just the cost of doing business. Let's trim some of the costs. So once that mindset shift happened for me, everything changed. And so you start seeing patterns, measuring what matters, and owning the outcome instead of just reacting to it. So, as Hector said, we got to watch the small things, but I'd add we also have to decide we're not okay leaving them unchecked anymore, and that's how we build efficiencies and discipline and long-term growth. And like I touched on a little bit in the beginning of the call, I think this piece is so important for businesses to be able to handle the ups and downs of the market. I think we kind of got a handle on in our business before COVID hit, and we were able to weather through that quite well because we had our pulse on our costs and how we could cut quickly. So yeah, that's really one thing I really wanted to just add is the mindset around this, and there is always room to improve.
Absolutely, Willie. You hit it right on. And what's important that you said around the mindset piece is that if you embrace that culture and the mindset, it actually lets you be super successful in downturn economies. And guess what? That's what we're in the middle of right now in this country, right? And so we know what we're going through. So why would we wait until we're literally in trouble to start making changes? Start to make changes in your mindset and behaviors and processes now so that when you do get into some price wars and when you do are forced to make some tough decisions, it'll be second nature. You're already going to be into it, and it's going to just allow you to stay not just afloat, but profitable as well. And so that was the messaging today. Want to make sure that we provided you with some insight and some culture opportunities around the pure structure of discipline in visually reviewing your data to get you to cost management. So, yeah, we'll open it up. We'll go back to you, Al, and then go around the room.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I have a quite burning question.
Yeah,
How do you spell Muda?
MUDA.
Muda.
Yeah.
Now, what is that? What is that? Is that an acronym? Does it stand for something?
No, it is Japanese from what I understand, and it's
Oh,
around the kanzai, which is kanzai is really the Japanese term, and that's lean for Lean Six
okay.
Sigma.
Okay. So Mula, Muda
Muda.
is Mula.
Muda is mula.
You know, uh, early in when you started to teach, I wrote down this phrase, something you said. It's we're talking today about the profit we thought was there, but isn't. And
Yeah,
it's like that hurt. That hurt to hear that. And I think that's probably common, way more common in business than we realize, or maybe than it should. We I tie that to something you just said near the end, especially when revenue is coming in. You said, a lot of business owners you talk with, they're all about the revenue. Oh yeah, revenue's great, revenue's coming in, right? Woo, we got this revenue stream, but man, doesn't matter if revenue's coming in, doesn't matter if there's no profit. What the heck?
that's right.
And why is there no profit even if revenue's coming in? So this was a really great lesson. It was a little bit painful to hear, not because of your teaching style, just because of this. I just want you to know that, okay? But just because of the pain of waste that we don't even know that we're wasting, and the cost of that waste, and it makes the effort of revenue sometimes all for naught.
Yeah, it's funny. I always hear a lot of this from entrepreneurs. They always say, well, like revenue fixes everything. And I'm
Hmm.
like, no, no, revenue masks inefficiencies that
Right.
you may not be really open to hearing and understanding and owning that you have in your businesses. You could easily go get another contract and you could get more revenue in, but if you don't fix your habits, you're going to be leaking that extra money out the door.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think we've got lots of time, and there's only, a few of us on the call today. We'd love to hear from all of you, even if it's just a thought, even if it's just something that was your key takeaway, but especially if you've got something that's maybe concerning you in this subject matter from your business, love to discuss that with you. Hector's always a gold mine to hot seat coach you, if we want to call it that. But I wrote this down as well. Look at cost as a waste, not as a dollar.
Right.
Look at cost as waste, not as dollars. That's a gold mine phrase right there. And I think that's one that we should probably put up on the wall of every office, right? Look at our cost as waste, not as dollars. And then Hector, you said wasted steps and
Hmm.
wasted seconds. And when you
Yeah.
first said that, my initial thought was probably like a lot of entrepreneurs, like, so what? A step and a second? Who cares? Or it's what do you mean it's really a waste? But it really speaks to me as I think that through and I let that sink in, the compound effect of the small stuff. And so
Yeah.
you talked about, well, this item that's one of our most common SKUs, and it's way down at the far end of the warehouse, and we got to send a forklift down there for the most common thing. So
Yeah.
seconds, how many seconds are adding up? My
That's
goodness.
right.
Or if we don't have the forklift, how many steps does that take? The compound effect of those small things, how big of an effect that actually has, to the point that it can be wasteful and actually eliminate our profit. It's really a profound thing. So not very sexy today, but really important and really profound. So
On
if anyone,
the steps stuff, I have a little story here. I know a guy that actually was hired by a manufacturing company, that they hired him just to track each person's step in their factory. So he would have a task for the day to track one guy's step all day, and
Mhm.
then he had to figure out how he's going to cut those steps off for this guy's role, whatever he was doing, whatever it was meant to move around, move closer, that he didn't have to put in so many steps. They urgent hired him just to do that.
But don't we want to get at least 10,000 steps in to stay slim?
That's for the gym.
Okay, okay, that's not for the workplace. Okay, got it.
Didn't UPS, they made all their drivers no left turns,
That's right.
right? Only right
Yep.
turns.
UPS's
Saved
operational.
millions.
Yep. UPS's operational team in the 90s and in early 2000s did a study of how much time they were wasting on red lights turning left. So they internalized this whole routing system that had their drivers always maximize at turning right because it kept them moving. It was crazy, and UPS is a great story, Tyler, and I'm curious to know, what do you see as we've discussed today? What are your thoughts? What are
So
your questions for us today?
in my case, it's tools, using tools, overlapping tools, having so many different tools that overlap each other, and refining that and trying to like really nail down your tech stack so that it's
Yes,
minimal.
yes,
AI is a good one too. We use Grok, Gemini, OpenAI, any other ones that come in for different use cases and problem solving and that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So, well, I kind of put it in my account. So each one kind of has its own budget account.
right,
And I can
okay,
just break it down to see how much we're paying on each. And then
like
depending
it.
on how the team works, we can shift licenses around for different things. So like Gemini is really good for coding. OpenAI is really good for documents, writing, procedures, all that kind of stuff, like getting that kind of work down. But yeah, so that's an example, I guess.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
So
Tech stack is one that I see
yeah,
now more common because
yeah.
as young entrepreneurs and business owners start that journey, they see or they latch on to something that they believe is going to help them more efficient. So they subscribe, they bring it on,
Hmm.
and then they bring on another one and another one. And all of a sudden, they have a tech stack of like 15 different platforms with X amount of users in all of them, but they don't communicate. So
Hmm.
now you've not only added waste in actual dollars and spent, you've added inefficiencies in your teams because now they can only do something in one application and another one and another one. And then you have to like go back and re engineer your processes almost because you're married to these different software tools.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to see how do you do that now? How do you stay lean? And like we've heard of organizations that audit them monthly. Amazon was looking at subscribers, per all these accounts, but like not just that, take it deeper and be like, does this software actually help us? Does it actually
Yeah.
reduce costs? Does it make us more efficient? Or are we just doing it to be trendy?
Right, right.
Yeah. So no, appreciate it, Tyler. That's good.
Thanks.
That's a great thing you just said right there. Or do we do it just to be trendy? Like, how
Yeah.
much money do we spend just to be trendy? So it makes me thinking on the personal side, how often do we, wide brushstroke here, but are we buying the latest fashion to put on so that we look trendy, right?
Yeah.
And
I
so and what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to impress? I don't know, but we want to look trendy. We want to look hip. So are we doing that in our businesses? Are we spending money just to be trendy?
I
And what's it costing us? And
I'd be
what's it
curious to
for?
know.
And are we trying to impress someone? That's a really great thing to think about. You're going to
Well,
make me be up all night on that one, Hector.
I'd be curious to know how many organizations are all of a sudden signing up to ChatGPT Pro just because they heard it and they feel like they need it, but they don't even know how to use it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And so, like,
yeah,
there's a lot of licenses for
yeah.
ChatGPT Pro probably right now that are going out there, and who knows? But I'm just, putting that as an example, right? And
And at a bigger scale, I'm just thinking about trucking. In trucking, there's a lot of pride in what kind of truck you drive, and Hector, you remember when we said, going forward, we're going to buy trucks that make business sense,
Yes.
not how they look. Whatever made the most sense for our business, that's what we were going to buy, and
Yep.
and we saved a ton of money doing that.
That's right. Remember the Hinos? We brought in the Hinos, and everybody's like, "Why? Why? Like we're in Grand Prairie in Oil Town, and
Yeah,
like why the Hinos? Why not the Internationals? The Hinos look ugly." Yeah, but the Hinos are super reliable. They're cheap on fuel. It just made the most business sense.
and they were 30, 40 grand cheaper to buy
That's
brand
right.
new.
That's right.
All the
I can
same
see
load.
Billy's trucking, but ugly trucks, but profitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were clean, they were in great condition, so they didn't look ugly, they just didn't fit the mold, right? Like if you look at a Hino 5 ton or 1 ton, it's got that flat front and it doesn't look as pretty, but man, like they're super economical.
And and not only that, the drivers started loving them. They just
Mhm.
wanted those trucks after a while.
Yeah, yeah, totally, because they became comfortable, they were easy to maneuver.
What a great real world example. Tyler, did you have some more to share?
Well, I can.
Well, that
Yeah.
you can. So here's a continue. And then when you're done, pick
Well,
somebody else of the other three. Just
I'll pick
pick a name.
Peter. That guy's been quiet the whole time. Uh,
Peter, go ahead, Tyler.
oh, I mean for sharing. I mean, I learned a lot of lessons. I try to keep an eye on every dollar now. I try to match it to the account. I try to reconcile in a process that I follow daily, like a ritual. We have a daily check-in every morning that we realign. So it's kind of your time to kind of do that. But it took a while to kind of get there. I did have that business where we were making money. Yeah, we'll get that. Yeah, we'll get that. Yeah, we can get that place. We can get that office. We can get that new thing. But yeah, so
It's
yeah,
amazing. You
yeah,
said we check in every day. And I
yeah,
always go into organizations and I talk about the power of the performance huddle, right? And
yeah, that's what it
and,
is.
and,
Yeah.
and everybody at first who has never heard about it says to me, like, you're crazy. Why? Why do we need to meet every day to talk about the same things? And it's because in repetition equals perfection, right? And
Hmm.
you become really good at managing the little things, it becomes so normal that when you get into the storms, you're like, it's okay. We know the process. We know
Hmm.
what to do. And if you're monitoring your spent daily, like that's amazing. That's a really good practice because it has your eyes on it every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and with the huddles too, like it's good. We just put our mission critical items in a meeting event and we
Mhm.
just bump it forward every day.
Yeah.
So it just carries the notes forward. So if we have to go back and look at a day, we can see what it was that day. And that's been a big help because we're a small team and we got so much going on. We need a place to kind of like, okay, customer experience priority number one, mission critical items number two, and then roadmap. And then we just kind of like keep track of it that way. And it works really well. I don't know. We keep bouncing ideas off each other as a team to what would work better, but that's kind of been the cycle time because we could pivot any time of the day, basically, depending on what happens. But
And that's
yeah,
great, Tyler. And but what I appreciate about your processes that you've described is that you've now made it part of your organizational's culture to do this. And
yeah.
and that's the critical piece. That's what Willie was alluding to at the end here. And that's like, guys, we can talk about all of these steps, all the Muda stuff and all that, but it's all meaningless. Meaningless unless you as leaders and as owners ensure that it is required at your place of business. It is a no debate. It has to be culturally ingrained, which means you have to lead it. If you don't do it and you don't, lead by example in these situations, it's not going to stick. There's not a program, there's not a coach, there's nothing that's going to get it done for you if you yourself don't take it and apply it and expect it.
Yeah.
Right. So, Peter, you're coughing there, but we'll come to you next. I think Tyler had said to go to you.
No, no
Peter
worries.
has the floor.
Yeah.
Well, I do feel what your guys were saying about the subscription and stuff. I'm happy that my credit cards run out every 5 years, so they have to request for permission again. So
Okay. Well, you're waiting every 5 years.
I think they should run out sooner, because that way sometimes you don't see the subscriptions, right? And that's a huge one. Like sometimes you subscribe and you forget about it, but you don't go through your credit card records and stuff. So that's one of the bleeding ones, right? And I learned a new word today, Muda. So
Yeah,
that's amazing.
there you go.
And yeah, I mean, cost production and the cost per unit that you mentioned there, Hector. Um, I'm not so much in a cost production or cost per unit, but I'm in the same boat, right? So for me, I have to watch out where my dollar is going. The same thing, like I wrote down that Sam Walton was cheap and saving money where he can. So for
Mhm.
me, it's kind of the same thing, right? Because I don't watch my dollars or take care of my pennies, then where's the dollar going, right? So
Exactly.
if I watch my pennies, then my dollars take care of themselves. That's kind of for me.
That's exactly the right
Hmm.
concept there. It's interesting because in your business, it's your time. Your time is money.
Yeah,
And so, when you're wasting your time, and or there's time waste between you and the closing of the transaction, that's when you're losing out and being inefficient. So
yeah,
identifying how do you speed it up? How do you get faster in closing the deals? And removing those wasteful time activities. And that could be like sending documents, having to wait for signatures, or, I don't know, like, but the time between you go from point of contact to closing the deal, right? And, identifying those wasteful activities in between that is going to probably help you get a lot more business closed.
Taking a
yeah.
helicopter ride like we did today was a waste of time, right?
No, it wasn't. It made my day, so that was actually awesome.
Is,
Thank you, Willie.
is a helicopter ride ever a waste of time? I
Yeah,
doubt.
Every
Never.
Thursday. Willie, thanks.
there
Peter,
you go.
Peter, I had to laugh. I
That's
thought
too
you were channeling my late
That's awesome.
grandmother there. She used to say, "Watch your nickels and dimes, and the dollars will look after himself." I was almost like, "Grandma."
There's something about that, right? And the other
Yeah,
thing that I found interesting in what you just said, Peter, and all of us can take this back, not just in our business world, but our personal world as well, our personal life. How
yeah.
many of us sign up for stuff and forget it, right? There's literally a business model that I know a gym franchise does that on purpose. They literally have the lowest gym memberships in the world because they get you in for that price point and they know that most people aren't going to go to the gym, but they're just going to keep paying the 7.99 or the 9.99 a month because you don't see it in your statement. It's so small, but it just generates millions of dollars for that chain.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, if you're done commenting, who are you going to pass it on to, Cecilia or James?
Well, I'll take Cecilia. She usually have great comments, and
Oh
not to
yeah.
bug you, James, but you do you also have great comments. I just had to bug you.
For me, I think out of all these, the Muda, when you were talking about that and all the different factors, when you mentioned the one about over processes, that one stood out for me because uh, right now, I mean, I've always worked in trucking industry, and we've pretty good identifying those big buckets, right? Like labor and then equipment repairs, like the big ones. And we do track the cost, and we try to always watch those indicators. But the processes is one that is a tough one because it's not always creating a direct cost.
Yes.
So for us right now, I think a big issue is the flow of paperwork. It goes from the driver and then it goes to admin, but then admin is not sure what they're doing with it or what's good or what happened or approval. So then it goes back to ops, and now the dispatchers, we're all looking at it, and then it goes back to admin. It's just, to me, it feels like it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of hands, and we're still working on it, trying to find a good system for it. And I believe we're going in the right direction, because we're thinking that the only way this is gonna go is using technology, right? Drivers should be able to just punch a button and it's gone, and we should be able to get the right people to look at it in the right order, right? So, but yeah, indirect costs is the one that is tough for us to keep control on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny because in these type of businesses, trucking, logistics, you always find that a process or a step is built to ensure quality and accuracy, right? They're like, we do it this way, we transfer it here so that they can check it and then they go there. But that's like 1970s. That's like so old. In today's world, why do we still do that? And a lot of the folks will tell you it's because this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
That's literally the answer. And it's like, well, why? Like, why would you do that? Like, there's so many new tools. And so having the opportunity to audit those things and ask the people that are doing it, is this task adding any value? Like, is this redundant? And you'll be amazed at how many people will say, yeah, like, I can think of a way to remove this step. I can think of a way to get rid of this wasteful activity, but nobody's asked me, so I just keep doing it.
I have another good example here. I remember, and you might remember, Hector, when we looked at all our processes, and we had this one lady filing for us all our BLL bill of ladings, and we started out small, and so we had this one process in place where everything got filed alphabetical order. And she was still doing it when we're 500 shipments a day, and all of a sudden she had created a whole roll. That's all she does. And then when I started questioning all this, well, that made just no sense that we were doing it like that. We implemented where there's a box per day. All the bill of ladings in one day go into one box and into the storage room, and that role was wiped out.
Can you imagine that she was wasting hundreds of man hours first putting everything into alphabetical order and then filing it that way? And then when you needed to find that, you needed to go find it through alphabetical order. That would be like so long to find something instead of just saying, well, the shipment was on this day. Like, go to that day and go look for it. It was crazy.
And and honestly, we never had to go back to our boxes because everything was scanned into our system. It was
That's
crazy.
right.
Yeah.
That was the whole irony of it. And she was spending all that time. Meanwhile, we just needed to go press a button and we could pull out the BOL.
Is this adding any value or is it redundant? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If we just go back to our teams, like I know I told us all to go back and do that concept of looking at 3 buckets. Maybe we need to scratch it. Like just go and ask your people that question this week. Hey, Bob, in your job today, do you see any activity that's redundant? Any activity that you think is wasteful? And let me know what that is. And just ask for it. You might hear like something as like, yeah, why is that thing stored over there? Why isn't it here when I can just grab it on my way out? Just something as simple as that. And it could be super helpful for you.
Yeah. I wonder if we could ask that same question in our relationships. Is this adding any value or is it redundant? I
Yeah.
didn't say that out loud, did I? That was
Sometime needed with customers.
That's right.
Anyway, we're coming
We go-
down to
we
the
go-
wire. We got a couple minutes left, but Cecilia, did you want to pass it on to James next?
That's right. James Stern.
Well, yeah, this is probably a very fitting conversation today for what we're doing.
Oh.
I actually have a question. So we have a crew out in Peace River today. We ordered a overhead door. The supplier sent out all the wrong end caps for the package. My guy called me this morning, and so he ended up driving 2 hours to Red Earth and me driving 2 hours to Red Earth to get there to get him the right material for a supplier error. I've chased suppliers for this type of thing before. There's absolutely no way they're gonna fix something like that because they're big boys and they don't have to. So what would you do? And this has happened 2 times in a week. 2 different suppliers, but 2 different jobs, 2 different suppliers, but it ends up costing me a lot of money.
Yeah, I would be asking the supplier to eat the cost of the hot shot.
Yeah,
That
that's
would be the first thing. And if they can't do that for you and they don't value your business, I'd be looking for a new supplier.
and if there's only a handful of guys that you can get that specific product, what do you do then?
Yeah, then I'd be looking internally. If you don't have a check and balance process before it's shipped, then I would put the ownership of following up on the people that you can control, which is your team. So whomever places the order, I would say, hey, listen, before you ship it, supplier, I want to see confirmation of the order back to me. I want to see what you're shipping me before you ship it. Because if you do that, I won't pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it without a PO, without a check and balance control on my end to verify that you're doing your job. Just because we've seen too many of those mistakes.
So yeah, and that makes sense. But so when we got the paperwork and the packing slip and everything is the correct information on there.
So it's a mistake directly on their warehouse.
100%.
Oh
What we
yeah.
could have done is gone and taken a measuring tape and measured every panel and every piece of weather strip and every end cap. But who does that? Like, I don't have the time. That's a waste of money and time on my end, right? So
Right. Yeah.
babysitting stuff that should be. But I guess what frustrates me is I've chased these guys multiple times for different errors, but they don't have to. Like Steelcraft, for example, they're so big, they can. Everybody eats their mistakes. They don't have to, and nobody's gonna run up against them because there's a lot of other door companies that don't compete with their product, their quality, so they get away with it.
And there's not a local manufacturer that could build the end cap for you cheaper.
Oh, they get built right in Edmonton. The plant is right in Edmonton.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying, like, if they're the supplier and they just can't do their job, is there somebody else that could build that end cap for you locally? It's outside of the distributor.
Well, I don't know if I guess you could probably get it, but it's part of the package. This specific package came out of Grand Prairie,
Oh yeah.
and so built by Steel. It's a Steelcraft package, but the package came through Grand Prairie, but they don't have to. You know, I don't know. I just sometimes it seems as if it's us chasing or fixing, paying for other people's issues. So yeah.
That's a tough one, in scenarios like that where they almost have you because they're the only provider. I would look for a wider provider source. Like if you're getting it from Edmonton, but you're getting this runaround and these cost inefficiencies, I might just look at Calgary and look for another supplier at a wider spot and see, although the shipping might be a little bit more expensive, but they can provide you pain-free service. Well, that outweighs that cost. Because how many times have you gonna go drive around or send people, to go drive around to make up for their mistakes?
Well, it's 4 hours drive for me and 4 hours for my crew just to meet in the middle.
That's
And there's two
crazy.
guys. There's 2 guys in a crew, so there's 3 of us guys. Me driving 2 hours, and both my guys, they couldn't do nothing. They were screwed.
Yeah. So
They're
that's what
sitting
I
there, right?
Peter looks
And
like he's got an idea that there's a new business opportunity for him right there.
I was gonna say go to Weaver Welding in Peace River. They might be able to build you one.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still around there though.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Hector, do you
outside
want
of
to?
no, go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Al.
was gonna say, do you want to reel it in for the night?
Yeah, but I'm curious here. Like, I think that's a great one to solve because
Truly.
so many service providers are often on the hook. Call it like the shitty end of the stick here because of bad wholesalers and bad transportation companies. And so outside of putting it back on them, I would just take it and go look for others. I would go look for wider sources that could help me out. And if that fails, then I'd go look for somebody locally that could build it. Somebody that I could trust that is going to get it done for me locally. Like those are sort of my options that I would use, James. You know, it might not be what solves it for you today, but in the long term, I would be on a mission to look for a different supplier.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. All right, we'll come back to you there, Al.
Well, I guess we're just gonna wrap up for the day then and for the week. Now, I just want to review the challenge that you laid out for us because you always give us one.
Yeah.
Hey guys, remember he always gives us one. So this week, if I've got it right, Hector, it's select our top three costs, assign each one to an owner. So they own that cost and charge them with finding a cost reduction or a cost savings associated to that.
Yeah, if you have the time and you need to, you know, and you can get into that plan, go do that right away. If you don't, and you just simply want to create ultimately the right culture, because that's all that's going to do. If you do it what we described there in that step, it's the first packaged of the whole thing. But if you want to start on step one, go and ask somebody in your organization what is one task that is wasteful and or redundant here. That's it. Go get that answer. Find that out first.
I am really looking forward to hearing answers to this question from everybody next week, and maybe even the compound effect of that cost that it's been having on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's it for me.
I appreciate everybody joining today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
In the meantime and in between time,
Absolutely.
whatever.
Take care.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Yeah. Bye.
Cheers.